Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Julia Cortry from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, along with Diana Gonzalez, who I'll let introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. This is Diana Gonzalez, Deputy Secretary of Higher Education at the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education. I see that folks are entering the room and the room is populating gradually. We went from 4 to 22. So let's give the room 1 minute. Hang tight with us, probably just 10, 15 seconds actually, because it's still populating. All right, Julia, I think we are good.
Excellent. So hi, everyone. So I mentioned I'm Julia. I'm a Senior Project Officer focused on offshore wind at the EDA. So today we're going to go over our GWO Safety Challenge Grant Program. This is the agenda for today. So I'll start with giving you guys a quick background on offshore wind in New Jersey to set the context. And then we'll go over the program challenge itself, selection criteria, how to apply, and all the key dates you need to know. And then at the end, we'll take questions. You can type those into the chat as you'd like. Happy to take live questions at the end, but if you have questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to type them in there and we'll make sure to review and answer at the end. Diana, anything to add on the Q&A part there?
Yeah, just when we reach the end, I'm able to enable folks who enter a question either in the chat or in the Q&A. So I just please use the chat function so I can unmute you and you can actually ask your question. Or you can put it in the chat and we will answer it verbally. Thanks.
So we'll start into the quick background so you guys have a better understanding of the context on why we have created this challenge and how it plugs into the offshore wind industry. So you may have heard the state likes to talk a lot about the offshore wind as a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We expect over $100 billion in investment over the next 15 years. Up and down the East Coast as offshore wind farms are developed, installed, and along with that, thousands of manufacturing and ancillary services and related jobs will come to the East Coast as we transition to clean energy through offshore wind. And New Jersey has positioned itself as an emerging hub for offshore wind. We are literally in the center of the action with, excuse me, with the vast majority of offshore wind projects set between Massachusetts and Virginia. So we're really at the anchor, the hub, the center of all of that activity. We have incredibly strong political commitment to the wind industry, with Governor Murphy announcing a commitment to 7,500 megawatts of offshore wind projects over the next 15 years, which is enough to power over half of homes in the state of New Jersey. We'll expect to take that even farther as we seek to hit 100% clean energy by 2050. That 7,500 number will have to double to at least 1,500 megawatts to get to those clean energy goals. So this is really a long-term industry, multi-decades, as we seek to both grow what's in the water and then eventually decommission and replace with larger and more powerful wind turbines after several decades of work in the water. The state is taking a value and supply chain growth strategy. So we not only see the importance of making sure that price and affordability are centered in our approach to procuring offshore wind energy for the state. We are also focus on economic development and ensuring that as this industry comes to the United States, that means jobs come to New Jersey to support the development of the wind farms and the sector. New Jersey has made a huge investment into ports as we seek to anchor the supply chain in the state, and most specifically in the South, as we look at the New Jersey wind port, which will be a mega super port with 2 to 4 manufacturing facilities, as well as marshaling capabilities, which is where some of the GWO training comes into play, which I'll talk about shortly. And not only is New Jersey at the center geographically, we also have very similar demographics to what's needed to support the workforce. So having both a large share of the population that's very high skilled, as well as a share of population that's medium skills. We need people across the spectrum to carry out these jobs, and they're very high quality jobs. So we have over 90,000 workers with offshore wind adjacent skills, meaning you could be an electrician or a welder or a plumber that may need just some additional upskilling to be or retraining to be able to do the specific work in offshore wind. And of course, we have a strong pipeline of top talent with over 150 higher education institutions in the region. And so the GWO safety training program comes into play as one of the most basic requirements that workers will need to participate in the industry if they're going to be touching wind turbines in the water or helping install them, or other roles throughout the industry. Safety is really paramount in the offshore wind sector. It's probably up there with quality and time to market as important values to the industry. The cost of the equipment and the just kind of unique nature of being both out in the ocean and really large components that the industry really recognizes and values safety as making sure that workers are protected and projects can be carried out successfully. The GWO safety training has several modules, so first aid, manual handling, fire awareness, working at heights, and sea survival. So there is a nonprofit body called the Global Wind Organization that has set these industry recognized standards. And so there is a formula in place for the safety training that has really helped bring consistency to the industry. So I'll turn it over to Diana, who will talk a little bit more about the program itself.
Great, thanks, Julia. We actually just got a question in the chat if we're able to see the slide deck post webinar. Are we able to share that with participants? Julia?
Yes, sorry, I had accidentally muted myself. Yes,
no,
we will be sharing it on the website that I'll link to at the bottom, but at the end of the slide. So it will be shared, and we're happy. I think we can email it out to participants as well.
Fantastic. There you go, Tom. All right, so next slide. Great. So you heard a fantastic overview from Julia on sort of the sector goals and how the state is making major investments in growing the offshore wind sector here in New Jersey. And we, in order to prepare to meet the needs of the sector, we want to ensure that our talent in New Jersey is prepared to meet that need. So we don't want to import 10,000 employees from Scandinavia to be able to meet these needs. We want to prepare our New Jersey workers and ensure that they have an industry recognized safety certification that a lot of these jobs actually require. So we have New Jerseyans at the forefront of our growing offshore wind industry. So the goals of the Offshore Wind Safety Training Challenge. So you heard Julia mention the Global Wind Organization. I'm actually going to paste here in the chat so you can actually all see the hyperlink to the GWO. It's called GWO, GWO for is its kind of short acronym. So you can actually look up the standards. So you want to ensure that the winner of this RFP is able to develop and deliver a GWO certified basic safety and sea survival training program and a training facility or facilities with the right equipment to complete all those modules that Julia had just provided an overview. So this is a you know, no easy endeavor here. So we want to ensure that I see a question, Travis. We'll be able to unmute. Yes, everybody is muted. So if you want to participate at the end, I'll be able to unmute. No problem. So next slide. So let's talk a little bit about applicant eligibility. This is open to New Jersey community colleges, any of the 18 community colleges, and training providers. So this is inclusive of labor unions, nonprofit community organizations, private training providers. So we want to make this as accessible as possible to as many applicants as possible. And applications from coalitions are highly encouraged. So if a community college and a labor union were to apply together, or a labor union and a nonprofit organization, we want to ensure that partnerships and coalitions are occurring because that just kind of is leveraging the ecosystem to ensure that we reach, just to have a robust program in place. And especially since training facilities, and we understand the kind of the capital demands of having a physical infrastructure, can be a challenge. So we want to ensure that there are partnerships and coalitions to ensure an effective execution of the training program. Registered and in good standing here at the bottom. So must be registered to conduct business in New Jersey and good standing with the New Jersey Department of Labor, Department of Environmental Protection, and Treasury. Next slide. And as you have questions as we go along, feel free to throw those in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function as well. So there's a requirement in the application where the applicant must collaborate with a GWO Global Wind Organization accredited provider. So we're actually, Julia, if you're able to, actually I can paste the Global Wind Safety Training Providers list. So we wanted to, the purpose of this webinar is we just kind of want to bring awareness to some of these requirements. And there's a convenient list where you can actually look up many of the certified providers on the list. So a collaboration with an organization that is accredited is allowable as well. So you see in this first bullet, applicants are required to have the GWO accreditation or collaborate with an organization that has that GWO Basic Safety Sea Survival Training accreditation. So that includes organizations that are not necessarily New Jersey based. We recognize this is a new sector in the state, and not everyone in New Jersey has that sort of badge of honor yet. So only the single lead applicant will enter into the grant agreement with our agency to receive the grant. So there needs to be a principal applicant in your application. So make sure that you have sort of hypothetically, if you did a community college and a private training provider, that it's noted that there's one lead organization, because that will go in, enter the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, the grant agreement with the state to receive the grant award. And then the EDA, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, will post addendum of interest, GROW training providers. So all of this is going to be provided on the website that Julia noted earlier. You're going to see not only just this presentation, but all the application materials and we have the timeline and deadlines that we'll go over shortly in the presentation. So we want to ensure that we're getting this information to you all as early as possible. If we can go to the next slide. Winning applicant will receive up to $3 million in seed funding from the state to develop this program and the supporting facilities. So just of note, this is seed funding, so this is not in perpetuity. So just kind of a friendly reminder to when you review the RFP application, to note a sustainability plan, and that this is, $3 million to help fund and jumpstart the development of this program and a lot of that initial cost to develop the program. So, things like capital expenditures or refitting, retooling a certain facility to meet the training's requirements, staffing expenses, the development of the curriculum to get GWO accredited, accreditation, expenses related, to management systems, IT, that the GWO requirements say that you have to have marketing, communication expenses. So there's going to be the opportunity to provide a detailed budget of the intention to use the $3 million. So note here at the bottom is the recipient of the grant will be accountable to OSHI. So again, you'll enter into contract with OSHI. That's the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education. And so end of year progress reports. So all of that will be outlined in the terms of the grant agreement. Julia, we're seeing a couple questions coming into the chat. Do you want to pause or take them at the end?
Sure, happy to take them.
Yeah, so we have to facilitate partnerships and coalitions. Will you be helping to match interested partners or allowing us to see who is interested so that we can make contact?
So in terms of the GWO training providers, we will be posting an addendum, as Diana mentioned. And if you are a GWO provider and have emailed us, you should get a receipt later today or tomorrow on making sure that we have the correct information for the addendum. In terms of the matchmaking, I don't think that's something that we have initially planned, but we can get some clarity on what role we could potentially play in that if needed.
Great, and we have a question from Esther James. Is it expected that the successful applicant will have to secure future funds from other sources to sustain the activity? So as I mentioned earlier, right, the $3 million is seed funding. So yes, evidence of a sustainability plan to support the program and the facilities will be a component of the application. But Julia, anything else on Esther's question?
No, I think we'll actually address it again in an upcoming slide, so we can talk further then.
Great, so why don't we go ahead and go into that?
Great, a perfect transition into selection criteria. So there's really kind of three buckets that we're looking in our selection criteria. So first, demonstrated pathway to GWO basic safety and sea survival training accreditation. So we want to see that you have a clear pathway to being able to implement the program and that it would be accredited by GWO and that would happen by 2022. And second, that having a proven process, so having that experience to implement a program similar or of the same magnitude of the safety training program. Second, we're evaluating implementation experience and capabilities. So this is examining a detailed plan for establishing the program and facility in New Jersey, having confidence in your timeline and achievable milestones, as well as how the program will support diversity and inclusion. It's as part of our efforts to create a stronger and fairer New Jersey, as well as making sure that the industry or offshore wind industry is inclusive and reflective of the state's diversity as much as possible. This is something that we are evaluating in the implementation process. And then the ability to execute execute it successfully. And third, the use of resources. So as we mentioned before, this is seed grant funding, and we want to see a clear strategy and ability to sustain operation of the program long term. As I mentioned, this is a multi-decade industry in terms of from now until at least 2050, we should see over 15 megawatts of 15 gigawatts of projects entering off the coast of New Jersey. And that doesn't include replacement of wind turbine farms, every 25 years or so. So there will be a sustained need for a training program like this as new workers enter the industry, and we'll need refreshing courses, etc. And then second, identifying recommendations for achieving cost efficiencies. So that could be an existing asset or facility that you or your partner may have, and being able to leverage that facility, or finding harmonies and other resources that you currently have and can apply to support this training program. So lastly, we have how to apply and key dates. So the notice of funding availability is currently posted on this website below. So you can, everything we've referenced thus far, you can find at njada.com/wind safety training challenge. But the NOFA, or notice of funding availability, will be posted in the NJ register on March 15th, and proposals will begin being accepted beginning March 15th as well. All questions will be due by April 23rd, but you are able to submit those in a rolling process. We'll answer them as we receive them, but it gives us time to issue any clarity or revisions if there's any confusion. And then proposals must be submitted by 5 p.m. on April 30th to be considered. And we expect to notify applicants no later than June 15th, which I think coincides with some of our board and agency decisions. And then the initial disbursement is expected by the end of June 2021. So that is all from our presentation today. So happy to take questions from the chat box as well as live. So I'll turn back over to Diana because I can't see the chat at the moment.
Yeah, no worries. So folks, if you put your questions in the chat as a reminder, or the Q&A function, you can also, if you have it, the raise hand function, and I'm happy to unmute you so you can ask your question verbally if you'd like. So John asked, is the grant funding provided upfront or on a reimbursable basis? I believe we're going to do, and this may be listed in the RFP, do a certain percentage upfront, because we recognize it's a lot of money and a lot of folks may not have the startup capital to for some initial costs. So we may do, I can't recall the exact percentage, it may be 50%, and then we could do the rest reimbursable, but all of that is subject to the grant terms to be determined later.
Yes. And that, I think the exact answer can also be found on the link here on the.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. And then we have another, that was John's question. Lindsay, you asked, should a virtual component be included due to current COVID-19 restrictions?
That is a great question that I do not have an answer to at this moment, but we will add it to our Q&A and make sure that it's answered in an addendum about how we navigate the virtual components if that's potentially needed.
Yeah, I can answer briefly here that the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education has a set of standards, state guidance that under certain executive orders that are required of post-secondary institutions or given the COVID landscape. So I'm actually happy to post those. So any instruction that is sort of licensed through our office must adhere to those standards. So I'm happy to share those, but we're hoping that any instruction is likely going to happen well after the pandemic is our hope. So that's a very, very thoughtful question, but I'll post those in the chat as well for awareness. And will this video recording be available, Julia?
So I'm not sure if the recording itself will be available, but at least this webinar will be. The slides will be posted.
And I'm putting here, Lindsay, in the chat. You'll see the top link is all of the COVID resources for higher education and the restart standards for institutions of higher education. So I'm looking at the participants list. I don't see any hands up in the Q&A. I see no open questions or in the chat. We'll wait a minute for folks who may have, oh, I think we got one hand up. John. Hi, John, you're on the line and able to mute.
Yes, hi, I had a question regarding the evaluation of proposals. Is there, are proposals submitted early, evaluated, and then accepted? Or are you holding back and evaluating all of them and then accepting, making decisions at the end of the period? And is there value to an early submission, I guess is the question.
I think generally we the evaluation committee receives them all at the end, since they're reviewed typically by a compliance person to make sure that they're in conformity with all of the requirements and are in good standing. We can clarify that question on our Q&A addendum, but I don't, that is to say, I don't think that you are preferenced if you submit earlier. I think we don't really know when the evaluation committee receives them, who submitted when.
Okay, thanks. It just the early acceptance date of March 15th led me to believe that there was some value to providing our proposal sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's when the application window begins. But yeah, it's not like college where there's an early admission window and your early priority. All applications will be accepted up to April 30th, 5 p.m. So in the state procurement process, many of you may be familiar with this, is a very hard deadline. So please be sure to get that in by 4:59. No later than, so 5:01 p.m. on April 30th is after the deadline. So be sure to get those in before, and all will be evaluated. All right, thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, I have, hey, Espen?
Yes, hi, Espen Strandgaard. I was wondering, is there any particular areas in the state that are evaluated higher to create this training facility, such as the South Jersey, Paulsboro area or like? Is there any value to this, or will all locations be evaluated equally?
That's a great question. And I I think there is some justification requirement on why you've chosen where you've done it, but there is not a requirement for it being in a specific region. I think that's another question we'll clarify in our Q&A addendum, just to be as clear as possible on that, on the regional question, on the regional component.
A follow-up question is there a link to the New Jersey wind port development to this in particularly, or is it seen as a separate development from your side?
So that's a great question. So of course, all offshore wind initiatives and activities are linked and seen as contributing to the ecosystem. I would say for this application, I would see them as two separate activities or items. Of course, folks who work at the wind port will need, or some may need, the GWO safety training. So it is quite complementary that we would see many of the workers at the port participating in the program. But it is not, it goes, we'd also see folks at operations and maintenance ports participating in the GWO training. So I think it's complementary, but I would see them as separate for this application.
Okay, thank you.
So we have actually a few questions. Julie, are you able to see the Q&A or want me to read it out?
Let me see. Oh, I can see it. Is this about joint ventures?
Yes, with exception of the Irish company.
Yes, thank you. This is a great question. So our joint ventures solutions accepted, i.e. us, CEFTEC as an Irish company, partnering with a local entity. I think, so that's a great question. I think we'll have to get back to you with our Q&A guidance, just clarifying on the types of partnerships that would be accepted. There are some requirements for Buy America in the state, as in workers need to be present in the United States. So there may be some, so it may not only be questions around joint ventures, but also considering where are the workers located, and do you have a US worker or a worker based in the United States that can be part of that partnership. But that's not a super clear answer, and we'll make sure to have some more clarity in our Q&A. And then the second question on so asking whether this is the program to implement basic safety training and sea survival only, or are there other standards that could be implemented as well? This is focused specifically on the basic safety training and sea survival program. I could foresee some questions around, or some opportunity as you're thinking of how to support this in perpetuity as a program, or maybe there are complementary things that would help with the financial support of it. But we're specifically interested in this training of basic safety and sea survival.
Great. And Julie, we have another question in the chat. Is the funding for this 100% New Jersey or federal funds being utilized? I'm pretty sure this is 100% New Jersey state funds, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And I see no hands raised. If we finish early, we may give you all back some of your time and not go up to 10 o'clock. So, but we'll wait for a few seconds for more questions, hands to go up. All right, John, you're up for another question.
Thank you. Earlier in the presentation, there was a statement that involvement requires that the company or entity be registered to conduct business in New Jersey. Is there anywhere we have a definition of what that is? And do all of the team members have to be to meet that registration, whatever that is?
Yes, so it is defined in the application on what registered to do business in New Jersey means. It may not be fully applicable to your business or entity depending on how it's set up. So I think there are like different rules for nonprofits, for example. But all of that is clarified in the document.
Okay, so for example, a private company that's incorporated in New York does not necessarily have to incorporate in New Jersey to participate.
So I think that is correct in terms of you don't need to incorporate in New Jersey, but you may need to be registered to do business in the state. And we can take a look at what's in the application and issue more clarity on that to make sure that it covers the extent of your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have another question in the chat. Can you comment about why community colleges are the only eligible applicants in terms of institutions of higher education? Julie, do you want to take a stab, or I can answer this?
Sure, I'll defer to you, Diana.
So community colleges are regional. So we have 18 community colleges that focus on highly technical certification type programs and are really well positioned. So we truly wanted to leverage kind of the post-secondary ecosystem of talent development and community colleges. Now, this is not to preclude for example, an affiliation or a partnership if a community college were to have one with a sister, a four-year institution, a baccalaureate granting, master's or doctoral granting institution. But I hope that's helpful, Esther, for the framing of why community colleges are positioned to take on this work. Any other questions from the group? And again, we have a few more minutes, so you can, will you provide a contact list of attendees? Julia, will we be doing that?
I am not sure on that. I think this follows the question on matchmaking and helping folks connect. So we'll clarify on that. I think when folks registered, I don't think we asked for permission to share their contact information. So we'll get some clarity on that. If you are interested in being connected with folks, there is an email that you can reach out to, which I'll send with the PowerPoint. And we can go from there to see how we can be supportive in that way.
Fantastic. I know it takes time to type into the chat or Q&A or raise hand function. So is this program up and running in another state? Is there a quote unquote best practice?
Yes, there are other states that are also in the process of standing this up. So I believe Massachusetts and New York have started to move forward on this safety training. Best practice wise, I think you probably could look at many of the European countries that are leading on offshore wind, that have set many of these standards as examples. But this, of course, is newer to the United States, and there might be some best practices that are specific to training in the U.S. But we quite benefit from the fact that there is a strong formula here on standing up the program, and great examples both in Europe and emerging in the US. Are there any other questions?
At 9:45. Even though we allotted this for an hour, we can return some time to you folks. Oh, we have one hand up. Lindsay Holmes, you are enabled to talk. You can unmute.
Great. Hi, just one more question. With the newness of offshore wind, is there still an expectation of, I guess a closely related background? My firm, we have a background in training, but, we're principally tech. But I think our training capabilities may really lend themselves to this project, as well as, our sort of ability to pivot in different industries, in terms of being futurist. But, we don't have any sort of energy or offshore wind, background specifically. Would you, for the sake of this RFP, would you require that we connect with, other firms or, other offshore wind specific leaders, or is that not something that you're necessarily looking for if there is a opportunity to learn quickly as much as we can about offshore wind?
So I'm hesitant to provide, specific advice or guidance. I think we can try to clarify that as much as possible in the Q&A. We do recognize that this is a new industry, and there are many ways to fulfill the required demonstration of being able to carry out the program, and having training experience or providing training programs is definitely one of them. But we can provide more guidance in our Q&A addendum as specific to if you're new to offshore wind. If we
Thank you.
Any additional guidance there.
All right,
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lindsay. And then next we have Jim Malloy. Jim, you're on. Oh, you need to unmute yourself, Jim. Hi, Jim. Would you like to ask your question? All right, I'm not hearing anything.
There we go.
Oh, there you are.
Is that working? Sorry.
Yes.
My computer gave me an alert to unmute and I didn't see it. So quick question about moving forward. I'm curious to see if you want the organization to bring in their own equipment to facilitate this training, or are you only looking at capabilities? So I work for a company called Petrofac. We've done a ton of offshore safety for oil and gas. And you've probably seen some of the white papers. There are a lot of regs that could apply to wind, but the government hasn't really stepped in and said those regs are definitely applicable. But safety is safety. And so we've done full simulations where we have people work in a pool and simulate being stranded and using emergency vehicles. So I'm curious, is the state looking to build that, or do they want the vendor to bring that? Or I guess I'm trying to get my hands around how immersive you want the safety training to be.
That's a great question. I think we'll have to answer it through our Q&A document. And just to clarify, you're asking about leveraging existing equipment versus bringing in equipment from elsewhere. Is that correct?
Right. Or if the school, if one of the tech schools wants to build their own center to do these types of simulations, because we can do so much in a classroom, but it's a whole nother story when you have people in a pool with life preservers on and they have to do actual survival things when there's an emergency.
Yes, and a facility is part of the grant challenge requirements. So whether that is building and, creating a new facility or repurposing or refitting a current facility. That is part of the expectation there. I don't have clarity on the sourcing of the equipment, but of course there is in the selection criteria some emphasis on cost efficiency in delivering the challenge.
Sure, I guess that leads to one other question: is would the state be looking to partner with an organization to partially fund the facility? And because some of these things can be pretty costly.
So the grant fund, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, the $3 million or the up to $3 million can go to both support, the seed funding can go to both the standing up the program itself, but also part of the facility.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, Julia, we have a few questions, or actually just one question. One was a comment from Fred Hunter. The Q&A document will be posted on the EDA website or email to registrants, or both?
It'll be posted on the website. We may send it out to registrants, but I think the best, I guess the best practice here is to continue to check the website for updates.
Great, and then I think we have, oh, someone lowered their hand. That probably answered that question.
And I'll also just put into the chat here the safety challenge email address. So if you have additional questions or any other issues or concerns, you can reach out directly to that email, and we'll either post answers on the website as an addendum, or reach out for additional clarity. Are there any other questions? It looks like we've reached a natural close here. Thank you guys so much for your time and interest in the challenge. This is a really super exciting opportunity as we think through how do we bring the industry to New Jersey and make sure that workers are prepared. It looks like, I apologize, it looks like we have one other question.
Yes, I'm not able to unmute. Oh, there we go, David. Hi, David, you're on. You can unmute.
Hi, Diana, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. And sorry to be joining late. We had some problems getting in. So I may have missed, answers to a bunch of my questions already. But I did have a couple quick ones if I could put them out now, and then also maybe follow up with you if there isn't time. But I did have questions for in terms of allowable expenses under this program, that expenses for acquiring and certifying instructors are allowable. I'm wondering what other types of staffing expenses might be allowable. Could we fund a project director and support staff?
Yes, the answer is yes. So staffing expenses to acquire and certify instructors is an allowable expense.
Okay, so but a staff to actually run the WIN training center once it's set up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, but recognizing that this is seed funding, right? So once you exhaust the entire grant award, there needs to be a plan, a sustainability plan in place. So,
Right.
salary is an ongoing cost.
Correct.
So yeah, you can pay for it, but then you have to show how you're going to maintain.
Sure. And I apologize, I didn't introduce myself adequately. I'm actually with Rowan College of South Jersey in the grants office here. So,
Hi, David.
yeah, hi. Looking forward to meeting you at some point face to face when we return to normal life. But another question is, you had mentioned, I believe EDA had mentioned that there would be a list of training providers. We've been looking around for providers, and we've found a few here and there. We were wondering if there was going to be a list released.
Yes,
Yeah.
we posted the list earlier. Oh, pardon, Julia.
Oh, no, go ahead, Diana.
Yep, we posted the list, the list in the chat earlier, and it was in the presentation, but since you jumped on, you probably don't see it in the chat history. We're gonna send all of this to everyone who registered, and we're gonna post it on the website as well.
Great, great. What's the period of the grant? I'm guessing it's 18 months or 2 years. Would that be approximately right?
Julie, is it 2 years? I forget the close
Yes,
of
there's
it.
like a, it's issued over time or dispersed over time. So it is over several months and over a year. I forget the exact number of months, but we'll
Yeah.
post that on the Q&A.
Yeah, there's a deadline for standing up the program, and I think that came 18 months after the initial granting, I believe. So
Yes, by the end of 2022.
yeah, we'll work in that time frame. And I was wondering, are there format parameters for the proposal, such as page limits, typeface, point size, margins, that sort of thing?
So all of that will be clarified in the application. So when you respond to the RFP, all of that will be clarified on how to fill out the application itself.
So there will be a new, there's going to be a new set of guidelines in addition to the NOFA that was released?
So when the application opens up, there'll be like an actual form for you to fill out, and then that will have the specific information.
So David, we put a bunch of links and an email address, a safety training challenge email address, because we have to close the webinar now shortly. So the email's there, so you can send Julie and I any of your questions, or you can email me directly.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
You got it, David. Thanks.
All right, take care.
All right, Julia, Valerie, I think we're ready to close up.
Great. Well, thank you all again, and we will be posting an addendum with all of the questions asked today, including those that we had not fully answered, as well as the list of interested training providers in the coming days. And we'll continue to update those as we receive questions. So thank you again for your interest, and we look forward to seeing your applications this spring. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.